right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for joining us, and that goes for all of you here in person in New York City, as well as all of you joining us via Zoom. Thank you all for being here. This is the second and final session of the Arcane School Conference in New York, and we will continue today with our consideration of this year's keynote. Let the group affirm the will as an expression of the law of sacrifice. We had several excellent talks yesterday, followed by insightful discussion, which threw light on the nature of the will, the nature of discipleship, of group responsibility, and how to handle the fiery ordeal to which humanity is today being subjected. And today we will be continuing our consideration of many of these same ideas, and we have an excellent lineup of speakers for us this morning. We have Sarah Murphy, who will focus on the importance of the full employment of the love nature as key to the right use of the will and sacrifice. Joanne Kutzler will be speaking on the special quality of joy that comes when soul consciousness and right group relationship is attained. Maya Costley will be speaking on the release of the will force of Shambhala at the Wesak Festival in 1948 and its subsequent availability to working disciples everywhere. Thomas Koshi will also speak on the theme of sacrifice and the story. I said Thomas Koshi. I'm sorry. I meant to say, yes, Thomas Koshi will be speaking on the theme of sacrifice and the story of the Gayatri mantra. Thank you, Barbara. Slip of the tongue. All right. So what all of these talks have in common is that they all touch on the right application and the use of the will, each in various ways. And through today's consideration of this very mysterious, very abstract, and sometimes very difficult energy, we can keep in mind this one fundamental truth, that the will of God is love. And this energy of the will, if ever it is to be applied to the building of a new heaven and a new earth, and to rebuilding the shrine of human living, it must be accompanied by an ever-increasing capacity to love, with right vision, with pure thinking, with sacrifice, with intelligence, and importantly also without fear, without hesitation, and without any reservation. And so to start us off this morning, we're going to have our dear coworker who heads the Spanish section of the Arcane School in New York to sound the mantram of the new group of world servers, Dora Ospina. She will sound it in English and then immediately afterwards in Spanish.
Gracias, Michael. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Que el poder de la vida una afluya a través del grupo de todos los verdaderos servidores. Que el amor del alma una caracterice la vida de todos los que tratan de ayudar a los grandes seres. Que cumpla mi parte en el trabajo uno mediante el olvido de mí mismo, la inofensividad y la correcta palabra.
In the macrocosm, will is the singular, active attribute of the highest God, so we are told, the one which gives rise to the many. And though will is often used synonymously with the word spirit, it is, in fact, the power by which the unmanifested absolute gives rise to spirit, its vehicle matter, and the entire universe of manifestation and consciousness. Will is that mysterious power by which all comes into being. In the highest sense, it is eternal ideation, the one sole principle of the great breath, which breath persists even through cycles of pralaya, when all consciousness, time and space, and even life as we know it cease to be. The will appears at the dawn of each new manvantara and gives rise to every creative force, greater and lesser, and thereby to consciousness itself. At the same time, the will holds within itself the blueprints for the entire universe and guides the many creative agencies to the completion of the great work. It is the will which, quote, breathes forth the many breaths and yet is life itself. In manifestation, however, we are told that pure will is only an abstraction, because it will only be brought into full development in the next solar system. Yet, it remains the first of all powers and present in all things as the dynamic life at the center of every unit of every whole. Whether this whole or this unit is the chemical atom, a man, a kingdom in nature, a planet, or even a solar system. The will is the power which gives rise to all things, which permeates all things, and which resides within them. And when that hidden center of life is awakened, it becomes a dynamic force, which relates the lowest to the highest, which destroys every barrier and gives impulse and direction to all the creative forces of evolution. Thus, the power of the will works simultaneously from above, but also from the center of every creative agent, both human and divine. And one of the foremost responsibilities of every disciple, therefore, is to develop alongside a growing moral purity, the will, and thus to truly work from the center with power, intelligence, and love in equal measure. To this end, the disciple must first discover and awaken that will and strengthen it through its application to the conquest of every barrier, and at the same time, to purify his comic or desire nature so that he or she can become a force for the highest good. We are told that all forces meet in man, and the directing agency in all of them can be traced back to the will in one of its many manifestations. Through the operation of his own innate power of will, the man or woman is able to dominate these environing forces and to make himself their master. And to this end, an understanding of the constitution of man is essential to distinguish between, on one hand, the self-will of the personality, on the other, the group conscious will of the soul, and also the inspired will of the monad. The human being is in its sum total 6 principles, 3 lower, 3 higher, and formed by a 7th, which is life, or monadic essence, which informs them all. And the higher 3 work through the lower by means of the soul or the solar angel, who grants the spark of mind to animal man, that garment of flesh which the soul necessarily animates and indwells. The will of the soul, which is sustained through countless incarnations, produces the integration and perfectment of the lower self. This is accomplished through aeonial sacrifice, wherein the soul dedicates all it has its entire essence, and its very being to the development of the full gamut of all the spiritual qualities of human living. And this leads eventually to the revelation of the central point of dynamic will deep within the soul itself. And this central jewel, when awakened, blazes forth in its fullest glory, marking the consummation of the purely human stage of evolution. The aim of the soul then is to make the personality a perfect and pure channel of its will. And to do this, the soul must necessarily work through the lower mind, which tends towards distortion to the degree that it remains earthbound, you could say, and attached to its kamic or desire nature. And whether that lower self gravitates towards its parent, the so-called Father in heaven, or to the animal of flesh which it informs, is determined by its freedom from this downward pulling and materialistic force, which we all know so well. In kamas, which is essentially desire, and though very necessary to the physiology of the lower self, remains spiritually pernicious until it is purified. And to this end, it is necessary that the man or woman learn to purify this lower desire. And this is done via the mind, which, as we know, is the organ of free will in the lower man. And such purification is, of course, incredibly difficult. The force of desire is so potent, and the mind at first is too weak to overcome it. It is important to understand, however, that desire is not overcome through negation or through the imposition of the mental will upon the desire nature, but rather by the lifting of one's consciousness into the mind and the soul. The higher will can then supervene through identification rather than imposition. And herein lies the secret of transmutation. For when the consciousness is focused in the soul, material desire automatically and immediately at once becomes spiritual aspiration. Will, we are told, is also responsible for the operation of all magical work. And this will being either the higher divine will, which produces objective forms in alignment with the plan, or the lower will, which is at the whim of material desire, and perhaps more dangerously, at the whim of every environing circumstance which may arise. Both the lower and the higher applications of the will are equally what is called absolute creators, by which means the man or woman forms himself as well as his surroundings. And as the will awakens, we can understand the need for moral purity increases exponentially, for the power which it bestows, if misused, has dire consequences not just for oneself, one's own karma, but more importantly, for the group and the purpose which that group seeks to work out into expression. And so key to ensuring that the will is not misused is, as mentioned just a moment ago, the transmutation of one's lower desired nature through the means of thought power and the focusing of the consciousness in the soul. And once this desire is entirely purified, manas itself, that is the lower mind, is freed and it is lifted upwards. And buddhi, or the intuition, then supervenes. The bringing in of this Buddhic consciousness and the intuition is what is key to the merging of the individual soul with the universal soul. Such an alignment is a guarantee of a pure heart, of a clear mind, and true moral righteousness. For the Buddhic faculties supersede those of the mind, bringing pure love, perfect sight, and therefore harmlessness in the truest sense. Alignment with man's higher principles is foundational to the success of what is called the magical work of the soul, which is the name given to the creative processes whereby the plans of deity are worked out. And this is the work of thought form building, essentially, and has fundamentally to do with the relationship between the soul and its mechanism, the personality through which it works. It also has to do with the creative work that is performed once a clear channel of communication is established between soul, mind, and brain. All of these are some of the fundamentals which we Arcane School students will surely be very familiar with. The Tibetan's writings on the Antakarana offer clear guidance on how the soul can link these higher and these lower principles. His instructions detail how to utilize the will to produce union between the soul and personality, and how then to utilize that fusion to evoke the energies of the higher triad, which in turn impresses the soul with its will. This triadal will is a direct reflection of the will of the monad itself, and the closest one can reasonably approach to the will of God. Such a comprehensive union through the will is key to ensuring the success of the magical work of the soul and to the carrying out of the plan. The construction of this Antakarana requires the unfolding and application of the will in the fullest sense. And the Tibetan describes this in a 6-step process. First is a stage of intention, wherein the right orientation to both the soul and that which stands above the soul, the higher triad, is attained and focused. And then the energies of soul and personality are brought so close together that those two energies become fused and at one, held at a dynamic point of tension upon the plane of mind. This leads eventually to their fusion and at one-ment. And at that point, and then follows a stage of visualization and the employment of the imagination, wherein one visions the work to be accomplished, which is essentially, from one angle, the operation of this highest will, this spiritual triad, that will in operation through the will of the soul now fused and at one with the threefold lower self. Next follows the very difficult stage of projection, wherein to these two previous points of focus and sustained concentration is added a third, which is the upward projection of the will, this will which is hitherto hidden in the central jewel of the lotus of the soul itself. And one then follows a particular method of projection according to the soul ray and employs a word of power. This word then becomes the agent of one's will. And once completed, the fused soul and personality becomes truly invocative. The response comes from above, and the Antakarana then becomes a two-way bridge, which is its ultimate purpose. This two-way bridge, we are told, is a bridge of both ascending radiance and descending illumination, that is, invocation and, very importantly, evocation. The employment of the will in such a comprehensive manner requires complete and utter sacrifice. But this sacrifice is, in the truest sense, a living process, wherein all the limitations of individuality are obliterated and removed, so that life itself in ever greater measure begins to supervene through every single aspect of the entire constitution of the human being, the lowest, the middle, and the highest. In every relationship one has, relationship with oneself, with the lower self, with the soul, with the group, etc. On this path, which is the Antakarana, the lower self then becomes the group conscious self, which in turn becomes the spiritual self. And importantly, this spiritual self is one with all selves. It is at this point that one awakens to the reality of a sameness of identity with all forms of life. And this because one identifies with that central point of life and will which resides within every unit of the planetary whole. One then stops treading the path and instead becomes the path, responding to the call of those other life forms who still may wander in darkness. In doing so, one participates in small measure in the same redemptive work that our planetary Logos has undertaken on his much vaster scale. Only through such total identification and living sacrifice can we become truly agents of his will. And this is key to the injunction encapsulated in this year's keynote that, quote, the group affirm the will as an expression of the law of sacrifice. This law of sacrifice is the major conditioning factor of our planet and is therefore the purpose which guides the operation of the will in all its many grades upon it. Thank you, everyone. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Sarah Murphy, to come up and begin her presentation.
Let me do that out of the microphone. And do you hear me okay? So I'm going to talk about practical esotericism, when soul love.
Esoterismo práctico, cuando el amor de alma relaciona la voluntad personal con la voluntad espiritual.
Sorry, 1 second. Marhilda, we have some issues with the translation function. Everybody just hold on one moment and we'll get it worked out.
That was my higher self. As usual, I couldn't understand her. Yeah.
I so agree. I agree with that statement for myself as well.
All right, Sarah, you can go ahead. I think we fixed it.
Okay. So when soul love introduces personal will to spiritual will. So at one of the Arcane School Conferences during the pandemic, I remember Lawrence calling the meeting to order by asking us how we were doing, and then laughingly answering for us, of course we're not doing well, we're Arcane School students. Never forgotten that. And as the conference went on, I gathered that though we had all, as Kathy was talking yesterday, agreed to be put through our paces when we signed up for the school, many of us apparently seemed to forget our agreement and resist the crises we were facing. And I knew I was not alone. I am definitely one of those who intensely resisted the sacrifices I had to make. I recall having a joking but serious conversation with what I imagine was my higher self, the Spanish speaking. She had the crook of a cane in the corner of my mouth, and she's saying, in a Groucho Marx kind of voice, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. So far, it seems to be a mixture of both. The burning ground burns indeed. The law of sacrifice is associated with pain. At least this is a fact of life for us here on Earth, and we're told on Saturn and Mars, but not elsewhere in our solar system. For our solar logos and most other logoi in our system, sacrifice and bliss are the same. Can you imagine? But do imagine, because the same will eventually hold true for us, and imagining can help us through the challenges we face in the meantime. At a certain point along the path, we turn our attention to constructing the Rainbow Bridge. The Tibetan tells us that when the Antakarana is successfully constructed, linking our brain awareness with the spiritual self, our consciousness will be centered elsewhere. And at that point, we are released from pain. In the interim, as the first tiny threads of the Antakarana are built, they provide us with a temporary temporary reprieve or way of escape. I think we can probably all relate to that weird mixture of pain and bliss that can weirdly coexist. And that exemplifies the point and points to a blissful future. The Tibetan tells us that the will is an expression of the law of sacrifice, and moreover, this law of sacrifice is the governing principle which results in each human unit becoming a savior. Furthermore, the destroying aspect of the law of sacrifice dominates at the second, third, and fourth initiations, and hey, that's us. At the second initiation, the law of sacrifice acts as a destroyer when it breaks the astral body's control over the personality. At the third, when the personality relinquishes its control and becomes the instrument of the soul. At the fourth, when the causal body is destroyed, the ages-long cycle of rebirth is finished, and the soul personality becomes an instrument of and reflection of the monad. The law of sacrifice always means the death of lower forms, whether they are the subtle bodies or the physical body. These little forms are sacrificed to the evolving life. There are human examples of this law of sacrifice playing out, of form being sacrificed to life. And we can turn to some of the more famous of these examples when we need a little fortification. These exemplars include the Christ and the Buddha, the Christ demonstrating sacrifice and physical death, and the Buddha demonstrating sacrifice in the death of desire. Another example comes from the life of Vivekananda, who founded the Vedanta Society of New York in 1894. Some of his letters survive today. In April of 1900, he wrote to one of his friends and supporters saying that the glamour is off life. Things are losing all their relative proportions to me, my body among the first. And about a year later, he sat in meditation and is said to have deliberately, consciously left, attaining the Mahasamadhi. So as we're called to make our sacrifices, let's remember the example of those who have trod the path before us and take heart and keep the faith and keep thinking things through. Once we have endured the ordeal of the burning ground and the burning ground has done its work, the light, love, and will of the soul and the triad with the group focus will shine forth, the lower giving way to the higher. These are important points for us to remember as we tread our path. And it's also helpful always to remember that we are parts forming a whole. Indeed, humanity as a whole is teetering on the brink of an expansion of consciousness. And clearly, just as it is difficult for the individual, so it is difficult for the collective made up of these individuals. Many thousands of us are said to have taken the first initiation. I bet it's more than that. And this dawning soul contact engenders a growing group awareness. We can see examples of this everywhere. The news brings us news of upheaval and tragedy around the world. And it's probably not by accident that in parallel with our increased intercommunication, the impulse to help and to alleviate suffering is strong and growing. The whole idea of human suffering becomes less theoretical and more real when we can see the very faces of the people who are suffering. All of this is happening under the law of sacrifice and death, which, as we know, brings us release from the lower forms. However, the pain engendered under this law can also temporarily trap people in a cycle of pain and despair, and thereby hamper their spiritual progress. I'm giving away that I'm a therapist, right? The aftermath of trauma can and does lead to exactly the release that we're talking about, and psychologists are calling that post-traumatic growth. But trauma also can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, which we hear more about, PTSD, which grips its sufferers in despair. As it temporarily stunts their growth, PTSD hampers not just the individuals, but also the collective, of which these individuals are integral parts. Fortunately, healing is possible for this condition, but unfortunately, most people still don't know about that. There's a growing field of what's called energy psychology. It's a mixture of Western psychology principles and Eastern modalities and theory. Some of the techniques, notably EMDR or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EFT, the emotional freedom techniques, the tapping, have been shown to actually heal people from their PTSD. And there's a good body of research for those. And there are other approaches that have less research, but promising results. Happily, groups of dedicated practitioners are leading the charge, bucking the status quo to incorporate these techniques in their therapy practices, or traveling to areas in the world, including places in the US that have less developed mental health infrastructure, to teach these techniques and help heal the emotionally wounded, or dedicating their academic careers and to researching and validating that the techniques work and trying to figure out why. There are two paradigms that explain the healing. On the one hand, PTSD is caused by a disturbance in the body. Traumatic events get locked into your body, and we need to involve the body in healing. This is the case that Harvard professor of psychiatry Bessel van der Kolk makes very well in his book, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a paradigm that captures the attention of many modern clinicians and is helping to move the ball forward. But as esotericists, we won't be satisfied with such a mechanistic and materialistic explanation. The body, as the Tibetan has told us again and again, is simply an automaton responding to the energies pouring into it. The physical body, therefore, cannot be the point of causation. So for us, another paradigm holds more weight, that the trouble is largely astral trauma, and the physiological symptoms are reactivation of that trauma. Having agreed on etiology, we turn to the question of what to do about it. The higher ever heals the lower, and the growing interest in and success of cognitive therapy points to the rapidly increasing embrace of this fact. However, in the case of trauma, simply shining the light of the mind on the astral problem is not effective. It's often re-traumatizing. On the other hand, involving the body and energy systems in healing really helps. So the tools of energy psychology involve working with the human energy field via the acupressure meridian points, the chakras, or the biofield. Energy follows thought, and in this case, it seems that emotions and thought also follow energy in a virtuous upward healing cycle. Traumas can be acute, like the kinds of things that we associate with PTSD, war, rape, violence, car crashes. However, there are many thousands of people walking around with the aftermath of a different kind of trauma, which is more chronic and enduring, the adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. We call this complex PTSD, and it plays a role in a lot of the problems and dysfunction that drive our fellow humans to do the dysfunctional, counterproductive, and pain-inducing things that they do. People with high rates of childhood trauma, such as poverty, violence, abuse, and neglect, end up more likely to have relationship problems, health problems, obesity, addiction, poverty, depression, anxiety, even a higher chance of developing cancer. I'm not trying to depress you. These problems are personal, and in another sense, the cause is collective, and I suspect that the solutions will be found in the collective as well. As humanity continues to evolve, so the problems of poverty will be eradicated, the problems of neglect and abuse will fade away. But in the meantime, as more people are healed from their traumatic experiences, they'll be freed to progress again upon the path, and the collective will be able to move ahead. So on this hopeful note, let's wend our way back from the mundane to the sublime. The will is an expression of the law of sacrifice, where the lower always gives way to the higher. This is the hallmark of life on earth. During the second, third, and fourth initiations, the personal will becomes less important as replaced by the sacrificial will of the soul and of the group. Soul love, which is group love, is sacrificial love. It is an aspect of the will, which is an expression of the law of sacrifice. It is the means by which the lower yields to the higher. It is the will as an expression of the law of sacrifice which breaks the thrall of the physical plane and the initiate passes on to the way of the higher initiations. For us, it will be the group love that allows the light of the higher initiations to stream in. This group love is based on the egoic aspect of the will to which we give the name sacrificial love. As we tread the way, passing through the harrowing experiences that prepare us for the second, third, and fourth initiations, let's rely on the group's love, strength, and clear thoughts to sustain us. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was just lovely. So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. I had to organize my notes. So we're going to go next into a visualization. It's really actually a bit more of a meditation. And this meditation is basically an alignment between the three planetary centers, but it is at the same time a bit more than that. And it challenges us to consider individually and as a group our discipleship responsibility to the plan and how our relationship with each of these three planetary centers is to be approached, that we can play our part in the great work. So just close our eyes and take a moment of alignment and recollection. We begin with the stage of recognition. Recognition of the group's soul and of the path of discipleship. Recognition of the soul itself, the source of love wisdom in both an individual and a planetary sense. Recognition of the hierarchy. We enter next into a stage of consideration. We consider that the hierarchy is the ashram of Sanat Kumara and so is in close contact with Shambhala. Using the creative imagination, we visualize all ashrams as responsive to the purpose and impressed by the energy of the will. This is the relationship between Shambhala and hierarchy. And we see this energy vitalizing all disciples, and through them, humanity. We can imagine the group sounding together with purpose and determination the following words: Thy will, not mine, be done. Next, we enter into a stage of consideration of the relationship between hierarchy and humanity. We consider that the hierarchy works through conscious identification with the plan, and that its power is expressed through love. That the hierarchy works through conscious identification with the plan, and that its power is expressed through love. Reflect on that aspect of the plan which is our part to play in the hierarchical effort, whatever measure of that plan you can vision. We imagine the whole group sounding together with love and aspiration the following words: Let wisdom take the place of knowledge. And now consider yourself and your group as part of the ashramic effort. Reflect on the initiatory effort that is unfolding on the planet today in the planned program of service, which is yours or your group's to carry out. Energized by light, by faith, by love and power, the spiritual center within which you serve. This is a group center, such as the Arcane School and its service activities, or any number of serving groups throughout the world. Energize that center by light, faith, love, and power. we imagine the whole group saying together the following words. Let the soul and likewise the one I seek to serve throw light through me on others. And next we enter the final stage, the stage of fixed determination. Reflect on the interrelationship between the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy and humanity, and the responsibility of the discipleship group with regard to their interrelationship. Next, take a period of complete focused silence as the group seeks to present an unobstructed channel for the inflow of light, love, and strength from the hierarchy. This is the stage of invocation. Sound together the great invocation as a word of power, radiating forth the energies of the group in fulfillment of the plan. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everyone, for your focused thought and attention for that very potent meditation. Thank you. So we have next our next speaker, Joanne Kutzer. If you could go ahead and make your way up here.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It is an honor and a pleasure, and I'm very humbled to be here with all of you, fellow students and bright souls here. You were bright before, but now you are really bright. And those in online, in other places and time, as well as those that have joined us to tune in. I will preface this with Lao Tzu's wisdom. He who knows does not speak, and he who speaks does not know. Our lower mind's words do limit and name, divide, and separate, but our higher mind can reveal and bridge. So hopefully you will find some golden threads of truth in the illusion of my words, and if not, perhaps in photos and paintings that will be shown. All right, the poet Rumi inspired and influenced my presentation's focus, and that is when our group does things, we do it from our soul. We feel a river flowing through us, moving through us, a joy. I have to say, we have picked an extremely eye-opening and interesting time to be here on planet Earth. Burning grounds seem to be everywhere around the world. The old is being shaken up, bringing to the surface that which is undesirable in substance and in thought. Weaknesses, karma, and shadows being revealed for revelation and transformation. We are living in a material world of our own creation, living in a dream, an illusion of separation, a prison of limitations and dichotomies, and perhaps a collective destiny of catastrophic devastation of our own making. One might say humanity needs to wake up. Our collective dream is quickly turning into a nightmare. It is worth remembering, however, that the collective of humanity is a fourth ray soul, the ray of harmony through conflict. Crises help humanity evolve and are a prelude to all initiations and expansions of consciousness. I'm reminded of what Francis Bacon said: in order for the light to shine so brightly, darkness must be present. In this incredibly challenging period of time, we're transitioning out of several things, out of the age of darkness, according to the Yuga cycles, from Pisces to Aquarius, from the 6th to 7th ray, and we're also feeling the effects of the soul of humanity working towards its first initiation. The incoming 7th ray is coinciding with humanity's initiation relating to the 7th physical plane. We're also feeling the effects of Shambhala's will being in direct relation with humanity for the third time. In the midst of this transition and all of this stimulus, part of humanity is responding from its lower self in fear, resistance, self-interest, and violence. Others, in growing numbers, are responding more from their higher selves with soul consciousness and selflessness to meet world need, realizing we are all one, and it's time for a new way to be. To change the world, however, we must change ourselves and our many relationships, both within and without. As light dispels darkness, incoming influences help us to accelerate integration, recreate patterns, structures, and forms, and foster group cooperation and sharing for the good of the whole. These incoming stimulations also have the potential for helping us to minimize periods of disorder, minimize suffering, and minimize devastating effects during this transition. With greater awareness, we have an opportunity to move forward on our journey to remove the veils of matter and separation within and without. Let us take to heart Margaret Mead's statement, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. It's the only thing that ever has." I would add, with the help of divine inspiration. Our group is part of perhaps millions of world servers on Earth today. Our group is an internal, subjective organism with some awakening to higher consciousness and livingness as souls committed to serve. This group stands as a point of invocation, as well as a group emanating point. Threads of light radiating from each member stimulates, attracts others, and interlaces, forming a magnetic aura, a world network of light. We can serve as an inner unity of vision under stimulation and inspiration to respond as and how needed to help bring forth the new age. Our light, as in Indra's net of jewels, illumines all others and reflects back an interconnectedness. A united group's activities' potency can be incredibly powerful as energy follows thought. The total structure becomes greater than the sum of its parts. By becoming sensitive to and responding to increasing light and directing it wisely, we influence and change the world. Ralph Waldo Emerson shared it well by saying, "It is a vast network of interconnection in all directions, in all levels. Our actions affect the whole of life in some measure, one way or another." The interdependence of humanity and the universe is the cause of much collective karma and suffering, but it's also its relief. Because of the interdependence, and as anyone rises, one lifts ever so slightly the whole of which one is a part. Our group work, includes working in common purpose vertically, enabling the inflow of energy, and horizontally transmitting impressions and light, vitalizing seeds of oneness, truth, loving understanding, right relations, and action. To address world illusions and integration on a large scale, outer activities need to first be produced by inner growth within, then objectively outward. The secret doctrine shared, the universe is worked and guided from within outwards. Love and service are inseparable qualities in our group's soul expression. Love being magnetic, drawing from the periphery to the center, is a force leading to integration and unity. We can be centers of divine love, both magnetic and constructive. We are here to selflessly demonstrate, express, experiment, and experience group fusion and group consciousness. Each of us is needed to do our part in bridging, stimulating, and supporting to lift our group as well as humanity to a higher level. We, the created, are the eyes, ears, mind, hands, and feet to tread the path, to carry out divine will, and become the path. As we thinketh in our heart, as Christ said, from our soul level with mind and soul fused, so are we. True magnetic radiation and pure shining forth becomes possible. Our group's magnetic love evokes or produces the soul sacrificial will, which produces the burning away, a release, and a consuming sacrificial fire. A soul-infused group in group formation can evoke spiritual will. This divine will is the spiritual will of each of us, and it expresses the law of sacrifice. This law is a basic law of all our group work. It involves destroying or releasing by fire that which has been realized. Each step up is ever through sacrifice. The soul personality submits to the law of sacrifice, so there's no impediment to the one life pouring through it. It is said, one has nothing but becomes all. Sacrifice is not to be deemed a loss, but a taking over by the soul's sacrificial will and love. And it is a revelation of and conformity to divine will. As more humans become more soul conscious, more divine stimulation can be applied to matter, form, souls, and groups of souls. Thus stimulated, souls can then do the work of release, attraction, and creative rebuilding. The river within us. It may be said evolution progresses like a flowing river through constant change. Divine flow is also a persistent rhythm and activity of spirit and soul towards its destiny of oneness. Great energies symbolically flow through humanity's body like a river filled with streams of living will, radiating love, and the power of truth. The river moving in us carries energy to vitalize, stimulate, destroy, purify, and bring an ordering of life. Shambhala streams that light of life, carrying divine will with a flowing in, vitalizing, stimulating, and flowing out, seeking expression through us. The river, or divine will, in time eventually transforms and frees its forms and prisoners. It wears down or finds ways over, under, through, or around obstacles, for no power prevents it following its destined course to the ocean or to the whole. The journey back to wholeness can be like a roller coaster, hills and valleys, or a turbulent cascading force before reaching a temporary calm and peace. The river also nourishes seeds for growth and creates new balance and harmony. Balancing of forces brings order out of chaos, restores equilibrium, and enlarges our horizon. Spiritual energy under the law of sacrifice flows in rhythmic waves, cleansing and eliminating all that hinders divinity from full expression. Its purification works towards oneness. Purifying one's own vehicle increases our brilliance of one's indwelling light and its effect on others. We are electromagnetically entangled in part of this circular, divine circulatory flow, like frequency waves passing through, rippling through life on earth, becoming more expansive and more inclusive. And lastly, our joy. We are told sorrow and agony as a mode of saving humanity will be replaced with joy and strength. The poet Rumi wrote, "Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. Whatever joy shakes from your heart, far better things will take its place." The Buddha taught, the man whose mind is shaped by selfless thoughts gives joy wherever he speaks or acts. Joy will follow him like a shadow that never leaves him. Working with joy and cultivating joyousness is a quality of soul life, a oneness with all beings. Joy is a powerful impulse, letting in light and producing magnetism. As barriers and hindrances that we created fall away, eternal joy of life itself can be realized. We can reach others through directed thought, directed joy, and directed love. In closing and in summary, the following seeds are given for us to plant. The power of our soul pours like a steady redeeming river current, sweeping through all aspects of our nature. The purity of our soul acts like a cleansing flood and bathes our lower self in the waters of purification. We then become a cleansing force for others. The light of our soul streams forth like a beacon light upon our way, and in that light, we see the light in others. The love of our soul wells up within our hearts with understanding and self-forgetfulness, carrying love to all we meet. The will of our soul becomes our will. We will know no other. We raise and lift others and see divinity in every form. And the joy of our soul illumines our lives and lightens burdens carried by those we meet. Joy is our soul's strength and our strength for others. With patience and inner calmness, where joy and bliss have their home, we can emerge from the testing and burning grounds. Points of crises call in the power of souls, so let our souls respond and sound forth in group formation with clear high notes. May the energy of the divine inspire and flow through us like a river, and the light of the soul direct and guide us. May our group stand and press forward in service to do our part in light, love, and great joy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. That was just lovely. Thank you. There was a sort of steady radiation of joy throughout the whole time, and it was a real gift. So thank you, sincerely, thank you. It was marvelous. In fact, both of your talks had such livingness. It was really wonderful to, I think, get a sense of the livingness of our group, the livingness, but more importantly, of this work, I think, as well. You know, that it's really, you know, it's not a bunch of words on a page. It's real people living real lives, having real joy, having real, you know, evoking real, like radiating real energy, you know, and that energy really came forward. So thank you. And we're moving now to a sort of discussion time with our panelists, and we have Sunny Koshi, who spoke this morning at the secretarial workshop, joining us for this panel. Unfortunately, and this is totally my fault, have gotten us a bit behind in our schedule, but we will take some time to at least hear from all of you. We may or probably will not have any time for audience discussion or audience participation, but we will later in this session before our final meditation. But anyway, the nature, or what am I saying? The theme of this discussion period is to be about the nature of the discipleship group, and this brings up many important questions. Some of them a bit difficult, some of them maybe not as difficult as they seem. But first of all, I think importantly is, you know, what is a group really? Sometimes we speak about group being a soul group, or the group being the hierarchy itself, or groups being something abstract and, you know, of the soul. And, you know, it's okay, we're part of this group, or the soul is group conscious. And so there's this group of souls and we're part of it and we know that, but maybe I don't know in detail what that really is, perhaps, you know, but maybe I should be trying to. There's a sense of that perhaps. But in a really practical level, you know, any serving group is a discipleship group. Even like those of us who participate in the triangles work, you know, the three of you, the three people that form a triangle for that work and for that purpose, in a very impersonal sense, of course, you know, is a group. And so we all are part of a lot of groups, some of them very mundane, but no less important as a field of service, and perhaps even more important in a ways, because that is where our consciousness is focused, where it should be focused, and it's where the real work goes forward. And so when we consider the discipleship group today, let us consider, you know, not just some abstract thing, but, you know, really where we are working with others, whether we know them personally or not. But the question I'd like to pose to each of you, if you could, and feel free please to answer in your own way, is, you know, what does it mean to you to work as a disciple in a group, you know, whatever group that is? You know, what does it mean if you're approaching it as a disciple? You know, what does that mean to you, a discipleship group? What qualities sort of come? Yeah.
Sunny's ready.
Well, I thought about this a little bit before, and I noticed that some of the words that I had already composed in my mind were being said in the talk. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But the one quality that I think the discipleship group has is harmlessness. And we know that harmlessness is utters no word which could damage another, thinks no thought which could destroy or cause misunderstanding, and it does no action which could harm the least of our fellow men. And the Tibetan tells us that he practices harmlessness with zest and understanding. So we know that, the discipleship group is a point, a central point surrounded by 6 concentric circles. And on the outside is the burning fire of self-will and self-love. But as we practice harmlessness, we move into the groups, not the center, but into one of the concentric circles of the group. And with him or a master of wisdom being at the center, we can use that harmlessness through all the various grades, right to the center, which is, divine love, consuming fire. So that was my main point.
I would add, in terms of adding to what you've already said, which is awesome. I'm always amazed at how many levels that we work at. That it's not just here in the physical body, and it's not just during meditation, but there is work going on all the time. And I am always amazed at how I will wake up in the morning going, whoa, what's that all about? And all of a sudden just being aware and being called out, it's like, okay, where are we going? So it's like there's many groups and so many subgroups and groups within groups. And I guess would point out that we work at many levels, many planes, and many places.
Yeah, and the role is a little different depending on whether it's more exoteric or esoteric. But I think that harmlessness, that is really the key, that kind of solves everything.
Thank you, guys. I guess to move on to the next sort of part of this discussion question, what is, the focus of our conference is the will, as we know, and as a group, this is sort of a difficult question. That's why I'm sort of hesitating how to frame it. But the question basically is, how can a group work with the will? Because as an individual, we work with the will in various ways. Harmlessness is actually definitely one of them. We work through alignment is another way to work with the will in an individual sense. Working with, I think, wisdom, also with deep wisdom, can be sort of evoking the will, sort of anything that reaches up higher, working from a point of identification with other life forms as well. That's definitely a way of working with the will. On the lower level, there's of course working with fixed determination. The Tibetan, of course, there's a quote. He says, "The will is not fixed determination." But what he's getting at is there's something more to it than that. But I think in the lower sense, fixed determination obviously is the employment of the will. But the question here, and I don't know the answer to it either, so maybe even just any thoughts you have at all on the matter. It's not Sunny's ready. But how does the group work with the will? What are some keys?
Well, I spoke about the discipleship group having the point in the center and then the 6 concentric circles around. And when we move into the group, that is I have it written down here somewhere. The clear, cold, lighted fire, sacrificial will, and group love. And you said, which I also have written down here, that group love is a part or an aspect of sacrificial will. And so it is that group love that makes it safe to work with the will. And when the love is strong enough, it lessens the power of the personal will and evokes the higher sacrificial love. So when true love is present, then we need not worry.
I would add to that, at least based on my experience, it's like you're tested before you're called to do something. So that increases sort of the confidence that you will be able to handle it. And having a clarity of knowing what it is that's needing to be done, what the purpose is it's then your creativity and stuff comes into play. I guess that's
It's like a traffic jam in my head. There's the harmlessness, I think, is going to be the way through it again. And trying to, so the group is able to work with will through the invocation and evocation. And yeah, it's a total traffic jam now. Invocation and evocation, and then the members of the group have their little piece of the cloth to carry. And so for us, then implementing what our little part in the work is, I think we come back again to what right motive, where is this coming from? Is it utter harmlessness? And do I have the right to invoke the will? Have I been, made it through the testing fires? So, yeah.
I think you perhaps, working, if you think maybe I'm a very visual person, so I had to think, okay, well, that's very abstract, but what does it look like? And you think, okay, well, somebody working out purpose in an individual sense, group sense, it doesn't look any different at all, actually, in expression, but it's more so the sense of identity that one has with others, that sort of identification, sort of the key to love, empathy, obviously, but that, the practice of harmlessness, perfect practice of harmlessness, it functions because, I'm like, have my back to everybody over there. So sorry, everybody. It works because you see yourself in others, but more importantly, you also see others in yourself. And so you see a whole and you see all those units within a whole. So to me, it's also vision. What time is it? Let's see here. Why don't we go ahead and, we're a bit over time, but if anybody has any thoughts they'd like to add to this theme of a discipleship group, what is it? How do discipleship groups work with the will? How can they fulfill their purpose? And, or anything at all to share about, working as a group.
Oh, I like this. The color of this microphone is much nicer. Thank you. You deal with that one. To me, they're actually very interesting questions. First of all, discipleship. It's an interesting exercise. I don't know whether you've done it, but to talk to perhaps a stranger or someone you come across in whom you sense something of an ashramic life, which to me is not that uncommon. And to try to talk about such an unusual word, what does it mean to be a disciple in today's world? And then you have to draw the answer from yourself, because you can't use a teaching. You have to draw the answer from the relationship between the soul and the soul of the other, and the plan. And so to me, this idea of discipleship is, because it's critical to our identity. We are drawn to a teaching. We know it's not the only teaching, but it's our teaching. And we actually, in today's modern world, seeking to be disciples, in other words, servants of that teaching. within ourselves and within every aspect of our life. And to me, that's a really, like it's a thing that you can talk, if you want to move a conversation to depth and reality, it's a thing you can now talk to many, many people about. And it sows a seed where perhaps in them they may find where their discipleship really lies. And I think many people now are drawn to a sense of higher purpose. The second thing is the sense of will. A fundamental character of this unusual, funny thing that we are all drawn into and that's overtaken our lives is will. And it's not something light. And I was thinking that question, I was thinking about it, and I think for this group, part of the things that keeps the will at focus is, first of all, a certain rhythm. So the rhythm of the full moon, the new moon. There's the rhythm of the 5 o'clock, the rhythm of the 12 noon. Because rhythm draws us into uses the will, a higher will. So rhythm, I think, is fundamental for a group, because there are different types of groups. Like I love bringing Rumi, and although Rumi and the Sufi movement would often be described as mystical, to me there's elements at the core of that are profoundly discipleship and will-centered. Therefore, it's valuable to think about what is in our group makes it a center of will. So one thing is rhythm, and the second thing is a sort of requirement. If you are touched by this teaching and you're drawn into it, you can't play around with it. You can, and lots of people, in my very judgmental sense, do. But if you really want to move into this teaching, there's only one way, and that is to use the will to enter into, say, the discipleship letters or into the laws and see how they live in your inner being, and then observe what happens. And that is will. It doesn't work. The beauty of this group life, as it's evolved over generations, is that human beings, funny little us, have applied will to enter into the spirit of what's been presented to us, which has come from this higher kingdom.
Thank you, Steve. We are a bit over time, so unless anybody else has anything they'd like to share, I think we'll just go ahead and move on with the meeting. All right, yeah. So we're gonna go on. Oh, yep, one more. Last, you got me at the last second there.
Be very
go
quick,
ahead.
Very quick. And I apologize if it's simple. All the work I've done is
Just give him 1 second. It's working now, probably.
Sorry about that. It's working now.
Yeah.
Hello? Okay. In all the work I've done, there's two things. One is this deep sense of commitment that every member of the group has to have at its core. And then the other one, which is the simple one, is just self-forgetfulness. You talked about a traffic jam, and there's nothing that creates a traffic jam than having some sort of powerful purpose or energy or will going, and a lack of self-forgetfulness, then there's a traffic jam and there's trouble. But if in these very powerful sort of situations, you can actually, I have trouble with this, manifest a sort of self-forgetfulness, things can flow very powerfully, especially if there's a shared commitment grounding the bottom. So just, I hope that makes some sense.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go on a short break, about maybe 12 minutes or so. So just enough time to go quickly to the restroom or get a quick drink of water in the lobby. And music, is that what you're going to say? Yeah, and we will be playing once again over the speakers during the break, some music by Curtis Hoffman. Sorry. Some music through Curtis Hoffman, and he can tell you more about that. More about the specifics of that. His book is also available for sale over there. So See you all in 12 minutes.
Presentation on will.
Great talk. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That was a great talk. right, everybody, if we could make your way back to your seats, please. We need to continue with our meeting. Thank you all for concluding your conversations and returning to your seats. We really appreciate your cooperation and cooperation, yeah.
Yep. Get their attention for a little longer.
All right, thank you, everybody. I know we all have so many ideas, so many thoughts, so many conversations to have, but it's now time for us to begin. So thank you all for making your way back to your seats, and we can get started. Clint, would you mind greeting that door for us, if you could, and just closing it? Thank you. I appreciate your help. Thank you. All right, so everybody, welcome back. I know that was a very short break, but it's a relatively short meeting, so we just want to get the most bang for our buck, I guess you could say. So we're coming back now, and we will have a presentation by Maya Costley. So Maya, why don't you go ahead and take the stand?
Thank you, everybody, for coming back so quickly to your chairs. I was trying to figure out how I was going to be able to follow Sarah. And it kind of dawned on me that my talk was going to be more of a Winston Churchill type speech. So here we go. As we wind down the conference this year, I would like to take this opportunity to also call to your attention and impress upon the group the importance of the WESAC festival that happened in 1948. The year marked a time of great advancement for the group because we had succeeded in strengthening our subjective influence within humanity through the work of our trained and occult meditators. Do not underestimate the significance of this fact. The Arcane School had only been in existence for 26 years. The world was in the throes of recovery from the Great World War of 1914 to 1945. Humanity, through its cataclysmic struggle with the forces of materialism, had won a great battle and had struck a tremendous blow to those regressive and dark forces. A visionary group had formed the United Nations and were moving forward quickly to create a world court at The Hague where conflicts and disputes between nations could be managed in a more neutral and rational environment. The atomic bomb had also been dropped, and through that, humanity had experienced the single most important event in its history. The Tibetan states that during the WESAC festival of 1948, the energy of the head of hierarchy, quote unquote, or the Christ force, as it is sometimes called, this force imports into usually available energies certain conditioning qualities, which emanate from Shambhala and are therefore related to the will aspect. This type of force has not hitherto been available to working disciples, but is now available, having been released at the WESAC festival of this year, 1948.
The group had achieved a new level of usefulness, so this force was made available to us. Later that year, through the release of these energies, the group was able to make another tremendous contribution to the furthering of the plan by the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the United Nations Convention in Paris in December the 10th, 1948. This is understood to be one of the most important achievements in human history to date. It suggests that this potentized Christ force energy enabled the UN group to achieve a new level of vision and understanding not present within humanity before. This was our success and also our potential. It's also what we're here to do. And at this time leading up to the year 2025 and beyond, we should look at each festival, the Wesak Festival in particular, as a channel for all available energies, including Shambhala force, to enable the group to continue to reach the highest vision and the greatest recognition of the plan possible. We must strive to make our greatest effort at this time of supreme opportunity. It has the potential to make an incalculable impression on the consciousness of humanity. We must take this torch that has been prepared and is being passed to us from our fellow and former group members. The Tibetans said that when the Arcane School was first founded, our co-workers then were told that they were building largely for succeeding generations, and that they would likely not see the results of their labor in their lifetimes. Their sacrifice should inspire ours. We must carry forward the work and fit ourselves for this service. We must make ourselves available so that this cyclic opportunity can continue to be realized. Our role as the new group of world servers is to help humanity align with the will of hierarchy and of Shambhala, where the will of God is known. As world servers, we must use our meditative training to make the necessary energetic alignments, pass on the energies contacted, and to the next and waiting point of reception. This is the way of service in an energetic and electric universe, populated by beings of magnitudes and purposes much greater than our own. We must identify with and find our place within these greater lives and consciously align with their purpose so that we can know what our part is within their plans. Can you do this, my brothers and sisters? Can you make the needed sacrifice and align with the will of the ashram and of the Father so that we can do our part and bring down these needed and available energies? Can you seek to love more than you've ever thought possible? The school and the group have been working for 100 years on the first point of revelation, that energy follows thought and the eye directs the energy. We now know that we are the eye of the Father, and we are learning to identify the energies available to us in service. We have learned to think more rationally, to meditate, and to work more as a group. Now the second point of revelation is our immediate task, which is that the will is an aspect of the law of sacrifice. As the conference keynote suggests, we're being asked to affirm this as a group. Affirmation is achieved through experience, and we affirm something because we know it to be true. We need then to affirm this second point of revelation as a group and recognize it to be true in our own experience. We have been studying and meditating upon this keynote. We have listened to our group brothers and sisters share their thoughts during the conference. We have discussed and even debated it. Can we now see it working out within the group? And can we see it preparing us for the immediate task ahead? We must accept this opportunity that the law of sacrifice is giving us to deepen our alignment with the will of the Father and see the potentized energies that are available and that we can transmit through the greater power of our group alignment and meditation. Do not forget the timing of this opportunity. Let us sacrifice all that we can so that the work can go forward with the strength of our group alignment. The next 100 years of the school depend upon our understanding of this second point of revelation, and then building on that for future generations of our fellow co-workers and group members to come. The energies of Aquarius are upon us, and we must strengthen our awareness of our group purpose and our group service. The Arcane School is here to train world servers, and we are told that we are in the new age of this service, it must be done in groups. As the new group of world servers, we have a specific role to play within our planetary life, and it is our work to fit ourselves to serve that role. It's not a matter of becoming, but of revealing who I am. This affirmation is our affirmation, and the second point of revelation is the next step in our process of affirming it. Will is a force of direction, synthesis, vision, and purpose. By affirming the will as an expression of the law of sacrifice, we are affirming that through our sacrifice, we will eliminate all that stands in the way of knowing who we are and what we're here to do. Our sacrifice will then make sacred and holy the form, function, and purpose of the group. We choose to sacrifice because we will no longer allow anything to stand in the way of a more beautiful and sacred expression of our group life and service. We know ourselves to be an aspect of the one life, the one soul, and an expression of the one work of our Creator. We serve that part with selflessness, harmlessness, and right speech most of the time. And we enable that life to express itself through our group work and service in the world. We are the eye of the bull of Taurus. It is our work to impress upon humanity the will of Shambhala through the agency of the Christ force energy, to hasten the manifestation of the plan within the human kingdom and throughout the world. It is also a year of crisis and consolidation for our group, so we must use this time of crisis as an opportunity to consolidate our efforts by gathering all available energies and forces into one united active transmission at this crucial time of Wesak. Let us not lose this opportunity by failing to recognize it. Alignment is an expression of the dual process of an inner recognition and an outer active service. Alignment is achieved when the outer activities of the group vehicle and the inner energies seeking expression through that vehicle are united. Let us make the necessary alignment and give ourselves in service to hierarchy and to the plan, so that these needed energies can be distributed to do the work of planetary redemption. The Tibetan also wrote that during the Wesak Festival of 1948, that the most important work for our group in the coming decades would be to make known the existence of the new group of world servers and of our preparation for the reappearance of the Christ. He then said that all else that he had done in service to hierarchy is of secondary importance to these two statements of spiritual fact. This was his last Wesak message. His teachings on initiation, which included the first and second points of revelation, were then followed, and we have been meditating upon them and studying them since. He also stated that the will is the divine aspect in man that puts him on rapport with and then controlled by the divine purpose, intelligently understood in time and space, and implemented by the soul as an expression of loving application. That this is the mode par excellence by which the will can be developed and is the cultivation and the recognition of the divine plan. Let us recognize our purpose within the plan and realize our purpose as a group during this Wesak festival and all Wesak festivals to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. It was a wonderful meditation on the spiritual responsibility and opportunity of our group during this time. So thank you. It was very, very, lots to ponder there. Thank you. I'd like to now invite our next speaker, Thomas Koshi, to make your way up here. Yep. Surprise. Okay.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Arcane School and the New York headquarters for giving me this privilege of speaking to you. By the way, I had a little cold, still remnants of it still there, so if something goes wrong, pardon me. So the title is From Egoic Will to Sacrificial Love, a story of Gayatri Mantram from Hindu mythology. So how do we connect that with the Gayatri? All expressions in the universe proceed from the one, pure potential or spirit, and everything returns to it. Spirit, pure potential, the monad, is primarily the expression of the energy of will. And the universal purpose is expressed from the plane of the monad. Love and intelligence evolve as a secondary principles. Love being the energy of the soul and intelligence the quality of the soul manifested through bodily forms. Consciousness or the soul is the fundamental essence of all living substance in all manifestations. Interestingly, modern science is beginning to agree with this fact. Max Planck, who pioneered quantum theory, considered consciousness as the starting point of all manifestations. That's part of the quantum theory, as a matter of fact. Tao Te Ching, written about 400 BC, says that anything that can be named is not Tao. Tao is Agni, fire, which is none other than pure love in our current solar system. We know that in the present solar system, all the 7 rays are the sub-rays of love wisdom. Its expression itself is a thought in the mind of planetary logos. And it's good to quote again Master DK, the will is not, as so many believe, a forceful expression of intention. It is not a fixed determination to do thus and so, or to make certain things to be. It is fundamentally an expression of the law of sacrifice. Under this law, the unit recognizes responsibility, identifies itself with the whole, and learns the esoteric significance of the words having nothing and yet possessing all things. It is that monadic essence identified with the will or purpose of the planetary logos. Under this sacrificial will, the soul is activated into the life episodes of each incarnation. Eventually, the will of the soul becomes the personality's will, and thus the personality is sacrificed through sacrificial love and brought into higher consciousness. Just like fire is needed to light a wick of a lamp, sacrificial love is needed to light up sacrificial will. The significance of sacrifice for disciples is that of identification with the hierarchy's plan, that of revitalizing, transforming, and guiding humanity on the return path, which is the path of redemption or freedom. For the probationary disciple, the lower aspect of identification, which holds deeper spiritual significance for him, is that of perfect alignment. The will to love is expressed in progressive stages of alignment and identification in man's evolutionary process, reaching higher and higher unfoldment of consciousness or initiations. Each of these initiations is a process of abstraction from the lower to the higher, which includes the spiritual essence of the lower. This process, in the final analysis, is a process of sacrificial love. The lower is sacrificed or made sacred, and its true essence is incorporated into the higher spiritual energies. When we consider the sacrifice from this perspective, we find that sacrifice is in reality joyous freedom. So now, let me tell you the Gayatri story and how it is related to the sacrificial love. The story comes from the Indian legends of old, the Puranas. It is believed that Gayatri was presented to the world by Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra, the first Rishi among 24 Rishis. I know you all know what Rishi means, like saint and all that kind of stuff. Before becoming a Rishi, he was King Kaushika, the ruler of a very prosperous kingdom in India. Once touring his kingdom with the entourage of his army, he came across a remote hermitage of a great sage, Vashishta. It was the most harmonious and peaceful place in all of his kingdom he had ever visited. There, the sage treated him and his entourage with a sumptuous feast. And after the feast, the king asked the sage, how did he manage to feed all of them in the jungle without any perceivable effort at all? So the sage pointed to a calf grazing nearby as a source from whom everything came out, all food, dishes, silver, everything. He said that everything came out of the calf's belly, of all places. The king thought that the small animal would be a great value for him, and he wanted to have it. He offered the sage a large amounts of wealth and land for the calf. Of course, the sage declined the offer, stating that the gift was a gift from Lord Indra himself, and he could not pass with it. Of course, you don't refuse a king's request, you know. So enraged by the refusal, the king ordered his army to capture the calf and take it as a kingdom. Of course, the sage was a great yogi, He used his great yogic powers or siddhis and brought another great army, which defeated the king's army in no time. And the king was brought to him as a prisoner. So the sage looked at the king with a little smile, blessed him, and said, "Go in peace." So this was a humiliating defeat for the great, and it was the greatest crisis in the king's life. He realized that strength, beauty, peace, and freedom of spiritual attainment is much more greater value than all the authority, wealth, land, and power in the physical world. Soon he returned to his kingdom, and he renounced his kingdom and took a long journey of purification and meditation, what's called in Sanskrit tapas. He went on a tapas. After many long years of tapas, he became a realized being, a yogi himself, and saw himself as a point of sacrificial fire focused within the fiery will of God. He entered the inner world divine, and his egoic will was transformed into sacrificial love. His one overwhelming desire turned into making his knowledge available to all. And as he gained this realization, he heard a feeble but very celestial sound in his inner ear. And the sound slowly became clearer and clearer and transformed into 24 Sanskrit syllables in 3 lines of 8 each. These 24 syllables constitute Gayatri Mantra in Sanskrit. He recognized its spiritual power of purification and joyfully decided to reveal the mantra to humanity. Then Lord Brahma himself came down and bestowed him the title Brahma Rishi Vishwamitra. By the way, Vishwamitra means universal friend. So the Gayatri is considered the most important and potent of all the Vedic mantras. The word mantram literally means instrument of the mind. A Vedic mantram and its effects may be experienced in 3 different ways. 1, its literal meaning of the words. 2, its inner meaning. Actually, the interpretation would depend on the person's spiritual unfoldment and understanding. And the 3rd is the sensitivity of the effect of the sound on the 3 bodies of the chanter and the listener. And more importantly, the sound of a powerful mantra, such as the Gayatri or the Great Invocation, contains creative force and under the law of attraction, precipitate the intended vision, especially if the chanter is mentally focused and the intent of the mantra is, and he is in isolated unity. The Master DK gives us the most profound inner meaning of Gayatri in his translation. We all know this. O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet. Now there are 3 things in Gayatri Mantram to ponder on. It is a group prayer or group meditation, group invocation. And the words unveil to us, so we may know the truth, do our duty as we journey to the sacred feet, Now, in the olden days, even now in some rare cases in India, the guru-shishya or master-disciple relationship is expressed by the disciple prostrating himself and touching the feet of the guru when he meets the guru. It is an act of humble devotion, an act of joyous sacrifice, personal sacrifice of personal ego. It is, in fact, an act of transforming egoic will into sacrificial love. Now, note the words in Master DK's translation, as we journey to thy sacred feet. So there's that correspondence there. The Guru is also a symbol of the one absolute, boundless, immutable being, the Parabrahman. Now, if you're willing, we would like to do a little experiment. So let us sit relaxed, come into alignment, and if you may wish to close your eyes if you like, as I'm going to chant the Gayatri in Sanskrit. Keep a beginner's mind, a mind which is without fear or prejudice. Keep fully open and present to all impressions and sensations which may come through. Om. Om. Om Bhurbhuvaswah Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuvaswah Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om. Om. Om Bhurbhuvaswah Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om. 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 as the pristine mountain stream sparkles the more, as it becomes exposed to the sun's glorious rays, so too will our consciousness be more illumined as we direct towards the light. And just take a moment to observe your state of being, the peace and harmony you may feel. And recognize that that is our true self. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I think we're all sort of left in a state of, I don't even know what to say. That's where I'm at right now. Loss of words. Thank you so much. I'd like us to move now into our final discussion period. And so what I will do, we are a bit short on time, but I'd like to just pose a few questions to our panel here, and then open it up to the audience for questions or comments as well as you may have. That includes everyone here as well as those online. So if you have, as we get into the questions here, if you have thoughts, you can jot them down or just make a mental note, and we will defer to you momentarily. This, as I said, refers to everyone online as well. So if you'd like to raise your hand, you can always do so by going to your reactions tab. So the theme of this discussion period is the manifestation of group purpose. A very important question, I think, and this was brought up in the Arcane School session on Friday morning. How does a group work with the will to manifest its purpose? I think we're all sort of familiar, those of us who are to some degree consider ourselves to be on the path. I think at least this idea of what's my, in an individual sense, what purpose am I fulfilling in my life? That's more than just sort of a material purpose. Is there some sort of spiritual purpose as well to carry out? Those of us who, when we first start on a spiritual path, it's one of the first questions many people ask of themselves. But as we learn to work as a group, we learn there is also a purpose for the group to manifest, whether that's, as I said earlier, a very mundane group, or whether it's perhaps a group which only our soul has an affiliation with and not so much our personality, only to the degree that that personality is also infused with that soul. So anyway, the question I'd like to pose, first of all, is just how to discern, purpose. How does a group go about discerning its purpose, whatever that is? Perhaps that may involve first the individual discerning the nature of the group itself and what energies need to pour through that group. So, yeah, discernment.
Go ahead. Of course, when you talk about the group, it's individuals make up the group. So, and we have to work as an individual, obviously, because we are all individuals, to bring out the group purpose. When I started, when we were doing the great invocation and all that, the line that let the plan of love and light work out. So that's as simple as it gets. What's the purpose? To the best of your ability, make love and light work out. And how do you make it work out? Fundamental thing, harmlessness, goodwill, end of story. That brings group purpose, group plan, all into manifestation, as far as I can see it. Because the more we try to discern what that individual purpose is, it becomes difficult. But if we can, in our meditation, in our intuitive sense, we get some input saying that this is something that you can do. This is something that on the manifested world, you can create as a plan, as a purpose to fulfill the plan and purpose, then do it. And until that time, let not the concrete mind try to devise what the purpose and plan is. Not, most probably they won't be correct anyway. So if we can get more into alignment and allow that soul input to come in, then it comes up. Interestingly, it just follows you. You don't even have to do anything. It just comes right in front of you. Just follow that. At least that's what I think.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Maya, did you have anything?
I was sort of trying to take the thoughts that had inspired me to write my talk and sort of look at what Thomas was sharing, and sort of find these points of connection. And I know when we do certain meditations at headquarters and we use the Gayatri at the end of one of them, for me, it always has this effect of sort of drawing me higher in my perspective, always reminding me that there's a higher identification than the one I'm currently subscribing to. And each time I am able to align with and identify with that higher sense of self or being, it sort of reorients my purpose within the plan. And then it sort of changes my relationship to how I'm operating in the world as an individual, but it also reveals to me my greater relationships within the world as well. I think we've all had that experience when we first read the Tibetans' work, that somebody was speaking our language. And we couldn't have had that experience if we hadn't already had an inner recognition that had the same language. And so it was like a mirroring, it was like a resonance. And I think individuals, we look for that resonance in the world. We look for our group. We look for the identification with those that seem to think the way we do. But I think on the path, that gets replaced by relationship to hierarchy. And then what does that mean? And it keeps drawing us up. When those alignments, those identifications happen, there's, I think, my personal experience is there's a flow through. It kind of does the work for you, sweeps through your life, and a lot of things get cleared out that don't need to be there anymore. And new things come in that are sort of the next step on the path. So for me, manifesting the will of the group is an active process of invoking that, but then it also has an organic process of completion. And our meditation work is helping us in that regard to align with those purposes, that will, which is to me vision. It keeps growing, and yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Maya. That reminds me of this thought that invocation must be a living process. So it's this will working out has to happen steadily over time. A constant recollection and moving forward from one step to the next.
Yeah, hopefully it is a continual living process. Yeah. We're not just talking about it. It's not theory.
Yeah.
It's actual. We can feel life force flowing through us. Mm-hmm. We feel a connection to the ashram. We feel enlivened and energized. Like Joanne said, joy. I think there's visceral aspects to it. There's inner recognitions. There's mental clarity. There's a lot of levels to it. On an individual level. But I think another aspect is the way it dissolves a sense of separation between ourselves and others. And so that eliminates fear, it increases love, it amplifies joy when we no longer have those senses of resistance and to others, because we see ourselves to be them and them to be us. That's manifesting the plan too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that destruction of those veils of separation that come with those recognitions and that the initiations that result.
I had a few conversations during our break, and both two different instances, people brought up this very important idea of the importance of reflecting on the relationship between one's group and other groups to which one is not a member, and how instrumental that is in the invocation of the will, but also of carrying out of any sort of purpose that one's group may be involved with. Simply because, the quote just left my mind, something like, we don't live unto ourselves alone, basically. We live, there's a whole, whatever a group or ring past not we put around one group, it's immediately sort of separative in one sense, because it cuts us off from the whole, and so we can't forget ever about that whole.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, the simple answer to most everything is simplify, simplify, simplify. When we start thinking about in our concrete mind, we have a tendency to complicate things for no good reason at all. And Steve was talking about rhythm. That's simplification. It's rhythm is, there's nothing without simplification. There's no rhythm without simplification. It's a level of equilibrium that we get to. So, and Master DK says, focus on the essentials and let go of all the non-essentials. It's as simple as that. It's a process of simplification. So, and what stops us from simplifying is our resistance to things. Flow of energy is hindered when we resist. It's as simple as, when the electricity flows through a wire that has resistance, it gets heated up. It's as simple as that. So we heat ourselves up by creating resistance within ourselves. So if we can let go of that and simplify our lives as much as possible, it's not possible all the time, but to the best of our ability, that would will take us to the next step very easily.
Brilliant, thank you.
Are we at the end of the time?
No, we're not. I was just going to.
Anybody else?
I was just going to open it up to the group, but better you go ahead and go, because it'll give them a second to collect their thoughts, and then they can raise their hand. Then we can get to them after you speak. Yeah.
I was trying to get back to my train of thought.
I broke us. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I was in the secretary workshop earlier, and I think Steve Nation was talking about, is anybody else but me sort of experiencing that there's something changing within the group? There's something evolving? And everybody was nodding their heads. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And thank you for saying it. I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking that because, yeah, and it's good to hear other people saying that. I'm also a co-Mason, and when I'm with my brothers in the lodge, it's another esoteric path, but we're all going in the same direction. And I keep hearing the same language. I keep seeing this synthesis happening between people I talk to here and there. And that to me is demonstrating that there's some veils, some separation, thinning, and a greater unity growing And that's just like in groups, like Michael was saying. But, we all experience it on different levels. Maybe it's, like Thomas is saying, you have a sense of resistance physically or emotionally or mentally. That's always a point of crisis, but it's also opportunity because it forces you to deal with it. You can't not, it's there and you have to deal with it. But that always results in a greater sense of unity, healing, and expansion if you can make it through the process. So, I see that in groups, I see that in individuals, I see it in the world at large.
Thank you, Maya. So, yeah, now if anybody from the audience would like to, we'll do you next, Arthur.
Yes, Maya, I'd like to bring our attention back to the larger group, the World Disciple Humanity. You had mentioned the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I wonder if you could reflect a bit upon some of the other declarations that have happened since, for example, the promulgation of the Sustainability Goals, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and so forth, and where the United Nations, as a representative of the World Disciple, might next lead us.
I'm sorry to say I'm not an expert on that subject. I could share my own thoughts on that, but I can't answer your question in that informed a level I think that you're asking. But I think there's certain key points in history that open the door for other opportunities to come through. I think the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was a major door, and the UN establishing certain key structures and agreements opened doors that everybody's been trying to walk through ever since, because there was that opportunity. So I think that's why it's important when something like an opportunity like the Wesak Festival of 1948 arrived, and that energy was available to the group, and there were people ready and able to contact it and use it, that something as significant as that could happen, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And that's why we can't be asleep at the wheel right now, because we don't know when the group maybe have an opportunity or be utilized, or energy might be available. And maybe some of the group might know in advance, others not. But my intuition is that these kinds of events will increase and they will be more frequent, and that's why we have to be more available.
Yeah, there is another one which is not as well known as the UN HR, which is the Universal Declaration of Human Responsibilities. And that one, and it relates to the issue of sacrifice.
Thank you, Curtis. Could we go to Arthur? Or is Arthur correct? Yes, okay.
Joanne mentioned in her speech that there may be groupings at different planes and different levels. And what came to my mind is, to what extent are we basing our work on our inner faith as opposed to continuity of consciousness, if that's at all possible?
Did you either of you want to answer?
Oh.
Or?
Well, the immediate thing I guess that came to mind is obviously alignment allows the opportunity for a sense of knowing to be present rather than just relying on faith. Faith can get you in the door, but alignment and knowing will, finish the job, or at least continue the process. So I think we are actively in the school trying to not rely just on faith alone. and develop more wisdom through alignment and meditation.
Mm-hmm. Just to also add to that, putting blind faith aside, because we don't want, obviously that's not useful. But I think in one sense, faith is key to the very important role of invocation that all disciples are asked to play. And by that, I simply mean that no matter where you are on the path, whatever level of enlightenment you've reached, there's always going to be that place which you can't quite reach. There's always going to be something above you which to aspire to, and which you eventually have to bridge to. And that happens through the own use of the will. It also happens through the use of visualization and through, and to me, faith is really when you're living on the edge of that which is about to be revealed, because you can't see it, but yet you have to bring it forth. And so what do? You live just on that edge, and you know it's there. And so there's that moment where you're moving from not knowing to knowing, and that to bridge that requires faith always.
Thanks. Faith also can help us sustain our efforts in group work. But I just want to address the question of manifesting the will. It's just really essential to keep in mind always, what is the group purpose? Why is there this group? And that takes a strong intuitive sense, and hopefully the group has some connectedness with where the purpose is coming from, understands what its role is in manifesting the plan, and is able to stay true to that. As the group works in the world, as you put on conferences and distribute books and have weekly webinars, a lot of the focus comes onto the physical plane. And it can make it harder to stay true to what the purpose is as the energy sort of expresses itself widely in form. It's also important for individuals to be honest with themselves about what their role in the group can be. Just because somebody wants to give a talk or write an article doesn't mean that they're the best one suited for that. And what really holds a group together is its subjective connectedness, and that takes a lot of work, and it's easy to lose that as we all play our part in the one work of the group. And it's also important to see how this group works with other groups, even if they're not connected. I would bet that probably 95% of the groups that compromise the new group of world servers are not esoterically oriented. And so you could look at what makes them successful. How do they stay true to their purpose? How often do they reevaluate what their work is doing, and is it remaining in alignment with its original purpose? Or have they gone off and gone astray? It takes some brutally honest reflection to stay true. I think there's a section on raising initiations, Rule 11, that addresses this, but I'll just stop. Thanks.
Hello. I was wondering, could I preface my question with a joke? It's to illustrate a point, and hopefully you'll play along. What did one snowman say to the other snowman?
We don't know.
Do you smell carrots? But when the snowmen looked inwardly, they found that there were no snowmen and no carrot. So the reason I wanted to tell that joke is because that was written by artificial intelligence. I asked it to write a children's joke in the style of Zen koan with a capping phrase. And this is consumer grade technology. It's free. Anybody could use that. And I mean, as cartoonish as it is, it's still very impressive. And I think that moving forward, AI is going to change maybe the shape of the world as we know it, and very quickly to the point where I think a lot of us are going to get a type of psychological whiplash from it. And so my question was, has this group in particular thought about any ways in which AI could, one, be used for the greater work, and two, are there any preparations in place for helping our fellow man, woman, or person cope with the whiplash of the possible oncoming change? That's the question.
I'll just break in real quickly with this. Being a staff member at the Arcane School in New York, I'm hoping I don't see a lot of you start submitting your papers using AI to write them. Please do the work yourselves. We love reading your work, but we want to know it's from you.
Just to speak more directly to your question, the way our group works is there's all sorts of people. The student body of the Arcane School is very, very diverse, and there's people that are involved in science, some are involved in AI, some are involved in education, some are involved in all sorts of different things. And so our work helps to encourage students to tread the path in their own life. It's not meant to detract from that, it's meant to enrich their own spiritual pursuits in whatever field they are. So certainly there are certain students working in that field. That is like definitely a growing field, I'm sure. And in psychology also, many students are involved in the field of psychology, but the school itself doesn't have any really, I would say, no specific focus on that very important field of human development at this time.
If anything, I think the school is trying to advocate for the soul present in whatever human activity anybody's participating in. And there's a lot of ways you can define what that is.
But just to say, I do definitely agree. It's a very, very important field, and one definitely rife with a lot of spiritual implications for humanity, so one definitely worthy of further investigation.
Oh, just a note, the purpose. I think that all the divine incarnations throughout human history has to do with the purpose. Because the Tibetans said, purpose is only an energy released within the council chamber of Shambhala, and there it must take shape. And since then, the divine incarnations have been bringing it closer and closer and closer to humanity. Christ anchored that will tenuously in Gethsemane. And since then, we've had a lot of help from the kingdom of God that he presides. Lately, we've received the teachings given by the hierarchy itself. And now we are beginning to build the Antakarana. What divinity did for us in bringing the will all the way to Gethsemane. Now we are also beginning to take it from Gethsemane all the way to Shambhala through building the Antakarana. And therefore, every work that is being done is actually working towards that will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Thank you, Emmanuel. We could go to Barbara next, and then.
So in my experience, the Tibetan is really brilliant about inserting very powerful phrases that we use over and over again. So this first one relates to group relationship to me. And it's the first part of the full moon meditation. And if you really think about it, I am one with my group brothers. All that I have is theirs. So everything you are and that you have, good and bad, is theirs. And then what's the next line? May the love of my, may the love of my soul pour forth to them, and etc. But if you meditate on that, all that I have is theirs. That's the most giving of anything that you can possibly do. And it's really how we can navigate in the group is like giving into the group everything I have. The other one that I reflect on a lot, which has to do with will, is the third stanza in the Thursday meditation for the reappearance of the Christ. Endeavor to concentrate your fixed intention to serve and to spread love in your surroundings, and realize that insofar as you can do these things, you are attempting to blend your personal will with the divine will. So this links love and will. And to me, it's kind of like, in order to reach the kind of will that we aspire to, that you can't get there except through love. And that's what the Christ taught. That's all.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I think, and we haven't really talked about the money meditation, but it's actually, it's actually very, very key to the will and to the right, to everything we're related to. Yeah.
I just had a point that I wanted to share in relation to the young man's point about AI. And there are actually 2 points I have related to that. One is my understanding of AI is that it has to draw upon the material that's already available in the world. And so I don't know if you know, but we have a CD-ROM of all of the books of Alice Bailey. And I know that the AI applications do not have access to that yet, because at least as far as I have observed, because I put them to the test. I had a little presentation that I had to make, and I asked AI to write on that subject. And it was a simple question for those of us who, are in this work, I asked them to distinguish between the ray and astrological energies of the current age and compare them to the ray and astrological energies of the coming age. And it got it wrong. So all I can say, it's not perfect, but if the books, all of the books were downloaded into AI facilities, I think they would do a better job. But the other point that I think is more important in relation to AI, the Tibetan tells us that all outer changes in the world have to be implemented in our own lives. So if AI has a really powerful, concrete mind, which it does, and it has tremendous creative ability in terms of many fields like art and music, it has not the soul. And therefore, it doesn't have access to the higher mind either. And so therefore, it's an opportunity for us to say, okay, humanity has to bridge to that higher level of mental and spiritual understanding. And therefore, AI would never be able to do that. So it's forcing us to move to a higher level.
Can we say that AI is group conscious? Are there a group of computers working together, for the furthering of the plan? I don't know. Can they work together as a group to do something greater than their individual selves?
As Julia, do you want to go really quick, really briefly? Okay, this will be our last one, and we have to. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give my answer as a first-year student of the school, like the kind of answers. And I think to Catherine's point, I guess the school gives an answer of, or tries to make us think about what it is to be a human. And Thomas brought this word of resistance, and this whole AI topics brings me questioning, like, why are we resisting so much a change that might free us from a lot of things, It can be damaging, like the atomic bomb, but the atomic energy can create beautiful things. So like, why are we looking into what is the problem with it and not the solution? And I often wondered when the period of that Tibetan said that our problem would be leisure and not to work. Like, I really want that to come, So if AI, so just my comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia. Actually, Let's see here. Thank you so much, everyone, and everyone online. We didn't have any hands raised, so we weren't able to get to any of you online, but we do recognize you're there and watching, and so thank you all for joining today. We're going to conclude now with our meditation. We have gone a few minutes over, so I understand if you have to leave, that's fine, but we'll spend about somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes on the meditation. All right, take a moment to letting in the light. We join together in group fusion to affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center with a new group of world servers, mediating between hierarchy and humanity. We sound the mantra. I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Alignment. We project a line of lighted energy towards the spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart, the great ashram of Sanat Kumara, and towards the Christ at the heart of hierarchy. And we then extend that line of light towards Shambhala, where the will of God is known. Higher interlude. We hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. Meditation. Reflect on the conference keynote. Let the group affirm the will as an expression of the law of sacrifice. Precipitation. Using the creative imagination, visualize the energies of light, love, and the will to good, pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth in prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. Lower interlude. Refocus the consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram. And together sound the affirmation. In the center of all love, I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. Visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and into humanity. Consider how these inpouring energies are establishing the pathway of light for the coming world teacher, the Christ. Distribution. As the great invocation is sounded, visualize the outpouring of light and love and power from the spiritual hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everyone, for all your participation, all your comments, all your thoughts, all your contributions during this weekend's event. I invite you to the continuation of the Arcane School Conferences in Geneva and London following the Geneva Conference, May 27 to 28th, and the London Conference, the weekend of June 3rd and 4th. Thank you all.